had to figure out a way to mount the front of the battery tray. I don't know how the factory did it, but I cut a piece of 1/8 inch flat stock and drilled some holes in it, put some spring nuts on there, and then pop riveted to the core support. And that way I can bolt the front of the battery tray to the flat stock. There's a lot of corrosion on the frame and in the lower part of the fender liner where the battery tray is. I assume that's from the sulfuric acid off-gassing and causing the corrosion in the area, because it doesn't spread any further than just that battery area. So I cleaned it, sanded it, POR 15'd it, tried to seal it up. Hopefully that'll keep it good. Covered all the stuff I'd already done to try to keep some of the dust down. Sanded and primed the fender liner with some dark gray primer. I added a cast aluminum water neck I got from Butler, and then also added a 160 degree stainless thermostat. I thought the water neck looked pretty good, and so I put it on there. Not too much bling. The power brake booster and master cylinder are pretty grungy, and just no way I was going to reuse those, and I just can't deal with the black booster, and it hits the valve cover, so it's just too big anyway, so I'm going with a 9-inch. The master cylinder must have been replaced at some point because the mechanic decided it wasn't worth bolting the proportioning valve bracket back up. And the proportioning valve, I may try to clean it up and reuse it, or I may just get a new one. I think I can get a new one for about $30, so we'll see how that goes. Pretty sure GM didn't route the wires back there. Somehow they ended up there. With the hood and the hood hinges, it was pretty difficult to get those nuts off the booster. But I imagined to get it done and probably throw all that stuff away. The bottom bolt on the passenger side is stripped out or cross-threaded. That was a challenge to get that off. It took me 2 hours at about 1/8 of a turn, taking 2 hands to turn the wrench, so I was worried the bolt was going to break loose and spin on me, so I guess I got lucky. The wiring's a mess, and this video isn't about wiring, but you can see what I have coming at me. The wiper motor's coming out. I'm not going to put that back in. I'm trying to get the engine compartment pretty sanitary and clean, so I'll put a block-off plate over the hole. I made a template from the wiper motor, and I cut it out of a piece of real thin steel. There it is, set in place. I scrubbed everything down with a purple cleaner, degrease it, and actually it'll take a lot of paint off as well. And then I got in there and started sanding the firewall and fender liner and frame, and there's the control arm being sanded. Again, a little bit bigger view, sanding the fender liner. There's the back of the frame being sanded. Took the steering box off. I'm going to have that rebuilt, and so I'll get it out of there while I'm painting. And the area where the power steering box is pretty nice shape, and it's interesting just a few inches ahead of it where all the corrosion was by the battery. The steering shaft out and sanded, and put some paint on it, so it looks pretty good. My friend Scott came over and helped me pull the hood off, and I need to redo the hinges because they're pretty nasty. And once I got the hinges off the car, I had pretty good access to the back of the motor, and I got in there with a scrub brush and a sponge and got in there and cleaned it up pretty good. It looks all right. I think that makes a big difference. I blocked off the heater core. All right, you can see where I got in there and got the transmission bell housing cleaned up pretty good. It's the paint I use. On the left, that is an eggshell black I got from NPD. Use that on the firewall, and I'll use it on the cowl. And the semi-gloss, I sprayed the frame with that and the control arms. Then the satin Krylon, I use that on the fender liners and on the core support. And then on the right is a flat black that I use for all the bolts, and I also sprayed the steering components, the drag link and the tie rod ends with that. And I'm starting to paint. I got the front of the frame painted, the control arm painted, and I'm working my way back. Got some paint on the firewall. Got my block-off plate in place with some Phillips head machine screws. And I'll have to get in there and clean up on the fuse box block. But doesn't look too bad. I'm getting there cleaning the motor up, scrubbing it down, and it's cleaning up pretty nice. And time to paint the fender liner. Kind of covered everything else up so I don't get overspray on everything. Sprayed it with the Krylon satin. It looks pretty glossy now, but after it cures, it flattens out. And all the bolts, threw them in a bucket of purple cleaner, and after a couple days I pulled them out and wire brushed them and gave them a coat of flat black paint. There's my transmission lines and my fuel line from the tank to the pump. I got those in place. It's kind of what it looks like. You know, this is the passenger side, the frame and control arm. Things cleaned up pretty good. And the driver's side with the engine cleaned up. And there it is. It's coming along. It's looking a lot better than it did. And time to sit back and have a cold one and think about what's next.